Okay. As you gather, this whole segment, both before and after lunch, is about desexing. And now Jeff's going to talk a little bit about all the different sorts of models of desexing that he has experienced in the US. And after lunch, we're going to talk about some of the desexing models that we have here in Australia, as well as the fixed clinic that we've already talked about that we do, and then do some planning about what we might need to do in our own areas. So I look very forward to hearing this next presentation. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. So you get a little of my philosophy here. The only real solution over companion animal population is a paradigm shift in social attitudes. Period, into discussion. That's just it. I could stop right there. But, that's the only thing that's ever driven society. And the reality of it is we always progressively move forward. It wasn't that long ago that they hung black people in my country for no other reason than being black, and now we have a black president. And I remember those days. I mean, I was a child, but I still remember certain things about those days, and Martin Luther King and that kind of thing. So, the goal is to look at companion animals as a truly valuable part of our family. And I think many people are there. They don't always have the resources to do what we feel they need to do. And certainly we want no euthanasia of healthy adoptable animals. And it does get to be split in hairs what you consider healthy and adoptable. Reproduce only to enhance the breed. Only the best of the breed should reproduce. Once again, it goes back to that 40-pound or 30-pound Pomeranian, probably not breeding material. And as a group, you need to definitely be, it's actually in good breeders' best interest to support spay and neuter. And I think good breeders are smart to figure that out. I work with a lady who breeds Rex cats, and I'm not sure why anyone breeds cats purposely, but the point is she spays and neuters all of her cats prior to adoption, So at least she's smart enough to know that she's not going to have competition, and that's probably a good idea. 10%, in my mind, reaching 10% of euthanasia of dogs and 30% less than equal to 10% less than equal to 30% is a very realistic goal, and probably won't get much better than that for quite a while, and we can get into the stats and play games with it. But you guys are pretty much already at 10% from what I understand on dogs. The question is, how can you tweak it a little bit more? And it's going to be really hard to get under that number simply because of the kind of animals you may be dealing with, i.e. pit bulls that are aggressive, but that's where maybe behavioral modification, things like that come into play. But it's that last 10%. It's like coaching distance running. The first 3 months you get 85% of your VO2 max. That next 15% takes you years. So it's the first 3 months, easy gain. And that, we're there. You guys are there. You got 90% under your belt. Well, the next 10%, those are the tough ones. That's the tough one. This is kind of obviously all over the place, but the four main things I'm going to put out: behavioral modification and counseling. I think those are really important. Spay neuter is really important, and this whole new movement, environmental sociology, is really cool. And Denver University is kind of leading the way in this. They do a lot of work in Africa, and an example would be, they set out snares for bushmeat. Well, groups go out and take the snares, and they take and make things with them, and they sell them, and they make money off the snares versus snaring things to sell them. So for $1,000, you can buy them a brick maker. And if they can make bricks, they can sell bricks. And if they can sell bricks, they don't have to kill animals. So there's all kinds of things being done, but you have to immerse yourself in. It's not, as a white man, I can't go to a Native American reservation and say, you need to spay and neuter your animals. That's in their best interest. Who the hell am I? What moral authority do I have with them? So it's really important to work through the cultural differences and immerse yourself in the culture to know and understand where they're coming from. Because a lot of it is economic based, but a lot of it's cultural based. And the bottom here, veterinary profession. And this has been an ongoing struggle ever since I can remember, for the last 30 years. Are we friends or foes with the humane organizations? I like to think we're on the same side. I compare this to like a ship, and what we've pretty much done in the veterinary profession is we've been the anchor holding you guys back. Okay? As a veterinarian, early on in my career, I decided I want to be the captain of the ship. So I'm going to take control of my destiny and what I do and work with these groups on my terms, not on their terms. And I feel it's been good for my business. I think it's been good for animals, and I think I've made some difference in the world in some small way. So, that's where we're at. And and the good news is there's more females coming out, so there's going to be a lot more help coming. Hold your breath, but it is coming. I promise you that. So. And we kind of went over these facts. Nothing's really changed. I think one important thing you can take away is when the vets say, well, if we spay and neuter everything, we're going to put me out of business. Okay, dogs are 15 times more prolific than humans. Cats are 45 times more prolific than humans. You wait for 6 months, you got plenty of problems. It's not, we're never going to, we can be at zero in terms of euthanasia at a shelter, in terms of education, and we can believe that animals have good homes, but there's always going to be a surplus of animals somewhere, some problem. Some grandmother dies and she has 3 cats, and I'm allergic to cats, so I'm going to bring it down and give them to you. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be economic issues, and you can make the argument people shouldn't have those animals. I hear that all the time from veterinarians. Well, they shouldn't have the animals. If they can't afford them, they shouldn't have them. God, they have 5 kids. They shouldn't have them either, but they do. That's just the reality of life. And once again, I believe there's a primordial part of our brain that just wants a pet. We want a dog. Kids are just so attracted to them. So I don't think that's going to change no matter how much we want it to change. No matter how much we believe they should not have the animal, they're probably going to have the animal. Humane organizations must be the leader. And I cannot stress this enough. Warehousing companion animals will never solve overpopulation. The biggest movement in America, and you don't use the word here, thank God, is no kill. No kill. I have been to no-kill shelters all over the world, and I've never been in one that I could not prosecute for neglect or overt cruelty. As an animal control officer, and I used to be an animal control officer, so under Colorado law, and obviously laws are different everywhere, but the bottom line is, I don't think our laws are very strict. I've never been in a no-kill shelter that I could not prosecute for just bad husbandry. You can say it's neglect, you can call it cruelty, it doesn't matter. You cannot let an animal just lay and die a slow, miserable death. And that's where no kill is in America. If we kill it, then we're not no kill. And if you build a no kill shelter for 500 animals, you always have about 1,000 animals, and then 1,001 you send down the road to the place that has the animal control contract that has to kill them anyway. So no matter what, if you're no kill, you still are complicit in the killing of animals simply because you still haven't solved the underlying problem. And it's not about bringing more animals into your facility. And if you're spending all your time and all your money and all your energy into take care of sick animals and not adopting animals because they're not adoptable, because they have multiple issues, but you won't put them to sleep, or because they're very aggressive and you just keep them in a cage and no one works with them, all you've done is wasted money that could be going towards desexing and education, which I still think is the main key. Legislation, education, and desexing. So there you have it. Minimizing overhead while maximizing long-term goals. And once again, it goes back to the same thing. How many animals can you warehouse? How many can you take care of? What's the impact in your community? If you have, you have space for 500 animals and you have 600 animals or 800 animals, are there any more animals out there that are running loose that need your help? And if they bring them to you, can you give them your help? Clearly you can't. Or clearly we try, and then we're doing everything half-assed, quite frankly. So be leaders, step up to the plate, understand sometimes you have to say no, but in the long run, you have to look at the big picture. And I think Dr. Hurley kind of says the same thing in a different kind of way, but I found her talk on shelter medicine quite enlightening, and that the same thing. So many times we pack them in, we create our own problems, we create our own disease, and we can't figure out why we can't adopt anything or why the community doesn't want to come to our facility because everything is sick and it's dirty and it's nasty. And we're busting our butts every day trying to keep up, but guess what? Our eyes are below water, and we can't get ahead of the game. So sometimes less is better. It'll bring up Peter Curley again, just because the Rex Foundation, you should Google it. They're just doing so many incredible things. But, these are the main things, and we can all agree on this. I don't know, legislative, education, adoption. I'm a real fan of foster homes. We use a lot of foster homes. I'm a for-profit veterinary hospital that adopts 500 animals a year, okay? And my wife does that, and that money goes into my nonprofit. and then the nonprofit turns around and gives me back the same money when I fix an animal with a broken leg, and then I put it back into adoption because someone can't afford the broken leg or they don't want it. So it just becomes a cycle. But, it doesn't cost me money, don't make any money, don't lose any money. It's just kind of taking money out of my right pocket, putting it in my left pocket. But the point is, it's a doable thing. And it can work. And there's, and this is once again, you've done as humane organizations, done a really bad job of confronting vets and trying to deal with vets in the same way. I don't understand why more vets don't want to be involved in that. It's an incredibly positive thing for your program. My vets have to go to schools and speak. My vets have to interact with the public. If you're going to work for me, you're going to do those things. That's part of what we give back to the community. And because of that, I have the busiest veterinary hospital in the Intermountain West. And I absolutely believe that. And it's not because we're all friendly, because we're usually not. We're usually grumpier than hell around my place because we're so busy and always under the gun because there's so many animals that need our help, But the truth is, it's just a matter of giving and you receive. And I'm a real firm believer in karma that way. So be aware, money spent on warehousing is not money going into a spay-neuter program. And I say spay-neuter because I'm all about spay-neuter. If they don't exist, they cannot suffer. That's the reality of it. Okay, if they do not exist, we do not have to house them. We can spend our time educating children. We can spend our time walking the few animals that we have or taking some animal off a little old lady or a little old man who needs our help. We can do the things that you should be doing as a humane organization, progressing humankind in a positive way, not trying to stay afloat of a bunch of sick animals that you have in your shelter that you can't adopt because of their behavior or what have you. There are things far worse than death, and that's the one thing I came to real early in my career. I'm not afraid of death, and I'm not afraid of killing things. I really got into spay-neuter. I was working at a shelter, and I killed 56 healthy puppies one day. 56 one day, and it made me sick to my stomach. It still chokes me up, and it bothers me to this day, and that's 30-some years ago. But bottom line is you can do other things. You don't have to kill. There's other ways to do it. Veterinarians should be involved in humane education. We're kind of like ambassadors. We have, some kind of moral authority, or at least society views us that way. The truth is, very few of us know the social implications of pet overpopulation. Very few of us know what overpopulation really is. Yeah, there's a surplus of animals. Or, no, there's not really a surplus of animals. Oh, those animals aren't owned, or those people don't have money. But we really don't know the nuts and bolts of overpopulation dynamics, the carrying capacity of the land. You can get in, I can look in Mexico and look at that street dog and say, well, we just want to kill them. And there's really good studies done, and they have. I shouldn't say we, but I know people that have gone in, killed animals 2 or 3 years in a row. Guess what? 3 years later, right back where it was. Or in a place like Chihuahua, they went and killed cats. They went crazy about cats. I think there was a rabies outbreak. Killed every cat they could find. Guess what? Within 3 years, they had the outbreak of the plague because there's so many rats and mice. The point is, it's different here because you're not a third world country. But the truth is, when you start impacting areas, maybe possibly in the Northwest Territories, I don't know, what the situation is like, but you can't just go in and spay and neuter and believe you've fixed everything either, because there's a carrying capacity of the land, and we don't take that into account. Okay? If you take something out of that niche, something else is going to fill that niche. That may be a positive, but that may be a negative. And so that's one reason I'm a real fan of releasing street dogs back on the street in Mexico, even though I know it's not ideal. Some of them are going to get hit by cars. Some of them are going to have other issues. They're going to eat something that's going to poison them. But if you take them away, other things take their place that aren't necessarily in society's best interest, in human best interest. And most of those dogs don't have a bad life if you fix them, in all honesty. They don't have the life my dog has, but you should have a vet with good surgical skills, and you have quite a few of them out at your place, and the few I watch seem to be pretty solid. Having said that, I could teach him a few things. But, vets, every time I hire a vet, the first thing they say is, I want to get fast. I want to get fat. What does that mean? It's like speed does not equal skill, and I'm a real proponent of that. And I think, and this is another place where Dr. Mackey and I and Dr. Larson, we part ways, and that, she has the 5-minute cat spay, and Mackey has the quick spay technique. I think just using those terminologies, in one sense, devalues us as a profession, but it makes it seem like it's simple. A spay and neuter is not simple. It is still a complex major surgery. Now, I can make it look pretty simple. Certainly Dr. Mackey can make it look simple. But if you're new and you try to copy what he does, guess what? You haven't done 40,000 of them or 60,000 of them or 100,000 of them. You haven't been doing it for 40 years. It won't be simple. So speed is not the key. Few complications. I measure everything by my complication rate. If I have no deaths and I have very few return problems, then I know we've done a good job. And that's the only way I train my veterinarians. And once again, assuming I'm in it for a little bit for the money, you got to be well compensated somewhere along the line. I mean, what other profession? You think about this. Do you go down to McDonald's and say, well, I'm a little shy on money. Can I have that Big Mac today because, I'm kind of hungry and you can give something to me? What are they going to do? Yet every day, just about, veterinarians are hammered with, can you give us this? Can you help me with that? They hear stories. I actually cut my price if you give me a good enough story, even if I don't believe you. But, it's a good story. So it's like, yeah, whatever, but that's a fun story, so sure, I'll cut my price in half, But most vets aren't that way, in all honesty, and they don't want to hear another story, and they don't want you come begging, but we do all the time. So appreciate them. What I find goes a long ways is simple things like a plaque or, just some kind of award, even if they're probably not really deserving of it. Stroke their ego, gets you a lot farther. I'm a believer in creating a neutering campaign and a neutering brigade. And anywhere I've gone in the world, and I don't care where it is, you go start picking up street dogs in India, and people will come out of their house and say, what are you doing with that dog? They don't say it in English, so I don't really know what they're saying, but something like that. They're yelling usually and moving their hands. But the point is, there are crazy animal people everywhere, okay? You guys should know that. And the point is, if you go in, you should know your problem areas. Every town, every region has a problem area. Find the person in that problem area. Find 2 or 3 of them. Yes, they'll drive you nuts. Yes, they'll be demanding. Yes, they're going to want more than they want. They're going to want more from you than you can probably give them. But the point is, find them, use them, implement them, and that's what I do, and that's what I feel like I do well. I find crazy people, and I learn how to work with them. I find, how to work around their craziness, okay? But those people do invaluable things for me because they have connections. They can take me into a community where I might not be accepted and make me acceptable to those people. They're my blocker, and that's really, really incredible. It's a way we can go into places for the first time and do 200 or 300 animals where some large humane society tried to go in the same place a week ago, and then this is a true story, they had 4 animals show up, because they had no one in the community working with them. They just showed up and said, hey, we're here, this is going to be this price, or it's going to be free, come on, this is the right thing to do. No flyers, no door-to-door, nothing like that. Just parked their big bus, and they had 4 animals show up. I went in 2 weeks later, and I had 120 show up. So that's the difference between working with someone and not working with somebody. It's really important to create neutering brigades. Surgical environment, and this is kind of what we're getting into. You can read through these. These are my top 10. These are things that are important. If you're going to do numbers, and I don't care, you don't have to do numbers. If you're set for numbers, then you can't teach. So you either do numbers. In Mexico, we did about 1,800 animals in 5 days last year. I said 6, but it was actually 5. We did 1,768 animals or whatever it is in 5 days. Had no anesthetic deaths, not one. And we're talking street dogs. We're talking, you can see both sides of their ribs, half of them with broken legs, broken jaws, bad teeth, heart murmurs, not one anesthetic death. Everything was spayed or neutered, okay? And very few complications. I think over the next 3 weeks, we saw 17 of them back. Now, you say 17, that's not bad, but I'm not so naive to believe there weren't more complications that just didn't make it back to us, But the idea is if you do your job right, you can really minimize the complication no matter what environment you're in. But you do have to have a lot of support. And the truth is, I got the easy part. I just got to do the surgery. And I'm going to run through these kind of fast so we can get to some of the protocols. But basically, 2 people per veterinarian, all right? It takes 2 people to keep up with a good vet. I don't care what anesthesia you use. Quite frankly, I've said for years, if I could smack an animal on the head with a rock and it would lay long enough for me to spay it, I would do it, okay? Especially if it just woke up with a headache. I really don't care. You give me, because the truth is, I can take drugs with me in certain places around the world, but I go in certain places I can't take them in there's just no way to get them in. They'll probably lock me up. Like I'm not taking Telazol into Mexico, okay? And I can get a drug like Telazol in Mexico, but guess what? It doesn't work quite the same as the one in the U.S., even though it's supposed to be the same, So you have to learn to work with what you have wherever you go. So usually what I do ahead of time is find out what drugs they have available, what's their protocol, what do they have that we can use. And then I can tweak it, because there's virtually nothing that you can't make better with a little bit of common sense and lots of experience. So you got to be able to clean and sanitize. That's the biggest thing I see everywhere, is just a lack of sterility, just a lack of cleanliness. In India, they have a really cool protocol. It's a national program now that they have to spay and neuter. They do all this with street dogs. And my God, it's a filth. It's just absolute filth. And it's like, you have all this free labor, and you're working. And we'll show some pictures, but it's absolutely amazing to me how dirty everything is. Like you're starting with sterile stuff, but you have goobies dripping off your ceiling, just clean the ceiling, paint something. I don't know, it's like nice that you have that it's law now that you have to have a sterile pack. I mean, that's a big difference in 10 years, 15 years ago, where they had no rules about it. At least you have to have a sterile pack. So you're starting right, but then, they're missing the big picture because they never really got it. This is where a lot of vets and me differ, and that is I'm a real firm believer that you have to use non-reactive suture material, especially at the base of the uterus. I think that's where a lot of our incontinent issues come from. And I don't have a study on that. It's just been my gut impression from opening animals up that other vets have done and seeing what's down there. And it's phenomenal to me. There can be granulomas there as big as my fist. It's like, is that the bladder? No, that's a big granuloma right under the bladder. That cannot feel good and cannot be good for the female that's involved with it. Adequate space and handling, obviously, any humane society understands that. We do a lot of very large volume stuff. You can't do 300 or 400 animals in a day and not have some space to do it in. So, 2 surgery tables per doctor, that's a big one for me, because basically if I'm going to do numbers, if you want me to do 80 animals a day, then it's surgery, 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 surgery. So you just turn back and forth, and the time it takes them to take an animal off, get it on, prep it, I'm almost done with that animal. So if I got to sit down every time they're doing that, that's just a waste of time. So, it does become all about efficiency. And, vets can say, well, you're going too fast or whatever. Truthfully, do you want someone who's operating on you who's done it 100,000 times? Do you want someone operating you who's done it 10 times? The thing about that assembly line production is you get really good at what you do. And there's just, I would take someone like a Dr. Mackey over someone who has 10 years experience, but they've only done 1 spay a week for the last 10 years, versus someone who's done, 100 spays in a day and made it look easy. Good surgical packs, and you can be pretty cheap on these. There's Pakistani instruments that are much cheaper. I don't like them; they don't always clamp well, but you can start out with cheaper instruments and slowly work up with more and more nicer instruments. Prepping the dog or cat, I think, one of the biggest things we see with pre-pubes, and this is important if you start doing the desection of young animals, you don't soak them down. You don't prep them the same way as you do an adult. We really lather them up and stuff. Okay, these little guys, they get cold. Their surface area is really big, so they get cold really fast. So it becomes real important to minimize how much you prep them. They won't get infected. It's not a problem. Minimize the prep. Minimize how much you wet them down. And you got to have a doctor that can actually tie a knot. Lots of doctors throw half hitches, what I find consistently. You throw enough half hitches, it'll hold. But the truth is, and you get these doctors, my God, their knots are in inch to, 2 inches long, because they're so unsure of themselves, they keep throwing knots, and it's like, well, all that does is create inflammation. All that does is cause pain and suffering. There's no reason to do that, You should be able to do a good surgeon should be able to do 40, 50 cats in a day. That's just, if you split them half male, half female, 20 to 30 canines in a day. That's really a pretty easy day for a decent doctor. And if you're getting paid, it wouldn't, say cats, say if you're getting $20 and you're doing 50 of them, well, you figure that out. That's not bad money in a day, because the cost isn't that. For female dogs, I think 5 to 10 minutes is an excellent surgery time for female cats, and 10 to 20 minutes for a female dog. I think the hardest dog in the world, which I'm pretty sure I've already done, it was in Brush, Colorado, and it was about a 100-kilogram dog, and it had mastitis, and it was a 9-year-old Mastiff Dane cross, Now, why you'd spay a 9-year-old dog, I said, my attitude was like, look, it's probably going to die in the next year anyway, and it certainly can't reproduce at this point, but we did spay it, and it actually took me 24 minutes, and I don't usually time myself, but I did on that one because I wasn't sure. So, and I think that was the hardest dog spay I've ever done in my life. You must customize your needs. Okay, and this is, the basic needs always are the same, no matter where you're at, okay? I don't care what I'm standing in, I care what's above my head. I keep a sterile field. You know, for vets to say you can't do this mobile stuff, you don't need a $300,000 bus. In fact, I argue against that. Spay USA coined me the father of mobile spay neuter, somewhere along the line, you know. I've probably done more mobile stuff than anyone else alive today. And I started out in a bus. And I'm here to tell you, I could only do 30, 40 animals in a bus, okay? Now, you set me up a room like this and give me a few vets, we'll do 300, 400, 500 in a day. You know, it doesn't matter. So, and it's just as efficient, and we don't have any more complication rate. That's the truth, okay? And no matter what the veterinary profession says, that's the reality. These animals, what we've done is taken human medicine, shifted over to dog and cat medicine, and, you know, we can do incredible things. Maybe your dog needs a pacemaker. I don't have a problem with that. You know, go learn how to put a pacemaker in and do it for your dog. That's fine. Spend the $20,000. I don't have a problem with it if you have the money. But don't condemn me for dealing with people who have virtually no money, and I'm trying to do the right thing by the animal. And my outcome is exactly the same, whether if it came to your hospital and you capped down and spent $500 on doing it, and I do it for $20 and I have the same results. You know, it's a problem that we have all the time with vets. That's once again, see, small animal vets really think they're doctors. Large animal vets know they're veterinarians, and there's a difference. All right, the task force technique, and this is the big enchilada. You know, and you can Google this, and it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is those 1,800 animals. Okay, that's a phase 1 program. Basically, we get together, we come in, everyone volunteers their time, no one's getting paid, and we crank them out. And these are community events. We advertise, we work with groups. Kids come in, I'll show some pictures in a few minutes, but kids come in, they watch, we talk to them. I don't speak Spanish, so my other vets talk to them and speak Spanish. You know, but if it's on an Indian reservation, I'm going to talk to them like, why am I fixing your dog? You know, I'll ask them that. Well, what's good about it? You know, it's important to know your stats. Know that, you know, cats 45 times more prolific than humans. You know, dogs are 15 times. Cats live 3 to 5 years longer. Dogs live 1 to 3 years longer if they're fixed. 80% of dog bites are from intact males. 80% hit by car, intact males. Most of the world's rabies is spread by dogs. 25,000 to 30,000 Indians die every year. Indians, not Native Americans, Indians with a dot, not Indians with a feather, die every year from rabies. You know, so phase 1, those are phase 1. And phase 2, they're a little less. They're not as big, and they can still be pretty frequent. And you're basically paid an honorarium, so that the vets get a set fee. You know, we're doing a phase 2 right now. We with the government of Mexico, with the government of Merida, where we've been doing the big clinics. We've done them for 2 years now, and now the government is seeing the positive side effects of it, and they say, well, we want you to target this now. We want to target this in some low-income areas. We think this is a positive thing, but we want to be more specific. Well, that's what we suggested 3 years ago, so now they're finally on board. So we're going into very specific small areas. They're providing us with the facilities that are free, okay, and they're providing us with a bunch of the suture and some of the drugs. So basically, you know, they're donating this stuff, so it's not really costing our vets. My nonprofit is kicking in some pesos for the vets who want to volunteer, so they're actually getting paid, and they're actually getting paid more at working one day with me than they would for the whole week at their own clinic. So it's working out that way. But ultimate goal is for us to have supplies, and this is what they do in Montana. They have supplies bought, and they stash it around in different locations, and any vet and any group can come and get that stuff and take it and go do spay-neuter, and then they take it and they put it back. And in Montana, that's anesthesia machines they have available, portable. All right, it's tables, it's Mayo stands, it's pretty much everything you need, you know, to go do the work. And on phase 3, which is where I'm at in Montana, I have all my own stuff, so it doesn't matter. I have my own portable stuff, but in the States, I can go anywhere and set up. And in a 15-man van, I take 2 seats out of the back of it. I can put enough stuff in there to do essentially 10,000 animals without a problem. Okay, it's just a matter of finding the time. So those are the different phases. And the thing about this, And it's really hard to go over a task force technique in a day. I mean, the amount of work that goes into setting these things up is amazing. Once again, finding people and all these programs, but it really does have an educational component. We research, we write stories about how the dog evolved with whatever group we're working with. It's cost effective. It provides a network because it's like the same people. I've gone back, skipped 2 years, gone back. It's the same people working the clinics that come out, and they're excited to see you, and they're happy, and they know it's made a difference. And I'll have some graphs later on some papers, but you can just see when we come in, the euthanasia rate and the impound rate just starts to drop. It just goes down, down, down. We skip a year, it stays flat. You skip a second year, it starts to go back. Come back, it drops back down. I mean, it's amazing, and the truth is, that is the reality. And you can make all the arguments from a veterinary standpoint of why you shouldn't do that, but the reality is that the cost to the animals and to the humans involved drops dramatically by doing this kind of work. And here we go. Good surgical technique does allow for early spay-neuter, and it does take a little bit of technique. And these are the pictures I want to show you. Conditions vary dramatically throughout the world. In India, when I first went there, their idea of sterility is that you bake stuff in an oven, which does kill pretty much everything. Then you pull it out, and then you spend the next half hour looking at the instruments with your dirty hands before you go wash before surgery. It's like you just defeated the whole purpose. But they don't understand if they can't. It's a cultural thing. You can't see a germ, so they don't really believe that they exist, and it's really hard to overcome that sometimes. So. And this would be in one of my own facilities, cap and gown. And I'm not a cap and gown. I wear a cap because I have long hair, okay? But the truth is, I rarely put a mask on. I wear a smock from time to time, but I do bone surgeries every day. And it's really rare I'm not doing a bone surgery. I haven't had a case of osteomyelitis in 20 years. I do 3 to 5 knees a week. I do 2 or 3 FHOs a week. I do 2 or 3 pins a week. And I just don't have, a problem. And I've done many of those in the field. I've cut legs off and everything else. Never much had a problem with infection. It really is not a reality. This is Mexico, and, it goes back to income. And once again, 75% when it's free, absolutely. When I first started working in Mexico, I was told there's no way Mexican men will bring their dogs to you. Kind of right. It's usually the women. But the women are in charge, as we well know. We've already learned. The women really are in charge of reproduction in a lot of ways, the bottom line here is people stand in line for 8, 10, or 12 hours. That's just phenomenal to me. And we do about 60% female dogs, 40% male. I was told we'd never do any male dogs, but we do about 40% male dogs. And I'm thinking, well, why isn't 50-50? Well, it makes sense. Even poor, uneducated Mexicans understand it's the female that has the litter. So they're more interested in getting their female done than their males. Not because they're attached to the male's testicles, probably their husband might be, but it's not because the women care about that. They just know which one has the babies. And so if they get rid of that, then the problem's solved. Now I would make arguments that male dogs, once again, bite and do all these other things, so it's important to do them too. But that's the educational part. So we do a lot of brochures in Spanish and things like that. We have big signs, and these are the kind of conditions. We'll set up. That was a handball court that we set up in. And it just anywhere. We'll set up pretty much anywhere. Dr. Mackey, this is on a Native American reservation. It's been a few years ago, but you say no matter what comes in, no matter what size, we get them done. Tony's from Mexico. Astrid's from India. Suka has got to be one of the best spay-neuter vets. She works for me, but she's from Japan. She can do a cat every 5 or 6 minutes all day long. A female cat, just incredible, just incredibly talented. So, same thing. These are, these people are not. That's a young child. We have people come in all the time, coming and going. Kids coming and going. This is Dr. Ed Umlauf. He's talking to these children, telling them why we're doing this, We try to explain things. A lot of times I drag, because I coach kids, I'm always dragging kids with me, make them prep, make them come along, make them interact with the local kids. So, and as you see, we do a lot of pre-pubes. And animals come in all different shapes and sizes and all different conditions. So, Ricky, I don't know if anyone's heard of Ricky Aurelian, from Romania. He's got to be one of the fastest spay-neuter guys I know. He's doing incredible things from Romania. In the vet profession there, you're not supposed to spay and neuter outside a clinic. He sets up tents all the time and does it, and he's always getting letters from the vet board, and he just doesn't care, so he's just that kind of guy. But he spent a year with me, and he's a pretty ornery kid, but just, a really good human being, and he's making a difference. I mean, he's just making a fantastic difference. And he wants to build a clinic and put an education room and have an adoption center, but he understands the key is the spay and neuter part. He says that, he wants to kind of follow Peter Curley with the Rex Foundation because they have an education, they do spay and neuter, but he really wants to be the full-service veterinary hospital, but he wants to educate, and he wants to get children involved because he thinks that's the way you change the future. And we all shake our heads yes, and we all agree on it, but how much do we really do it? And that's my question. How much do we really do it? And I try to make it a big part of what I do. So they say they bring dogs and all kinds of things, but you can do very large volume, and these are all animals recovering. Is it ideal? No. Do we have problems? No. These are tough dogs. These are street dogs. Once again, it's hard to kill them. They're walking disasters. I mean, you cut open their abdomen, and heartworms. There's so many heartworms in them. They're in their abdomen, migrating through. They just float up out of the belly. I mean, you can't even conceive of it. And once again, they don't die. They get up and they walk out. And all we've done is stop the reproduction. Now, we usually vaccinate them. It's real important to connect it with our rabies program down there. So we're vaccinating, we're deworming, we're doing the things we can. But, that all drives up cost. Who pays for it? And it gets back to that. It's because these people don't pay anything for this. This is in India. As you can see, they have pretty nice rooms. But if you start looking really close, which you can't really appreciate in the pictures, it's just absolute filth all around you. Even though the stainless steel table's nice and clean, even though you're starting with a sterile pack, everything else is just filthy. And I'm like, you have 20 people standing here doing nothing that could all be cleaning, and I don't understand that. But those are the things we work on. Same thing. That's in India, And so, I found, the vets are much more competent than they were 10, 15 years ago when I went, so they've definitely come a long ways. They have really good rules and regulations now, so it is slowly, as a species, I think we do progress forward. We just all do it at different levels, Lecturing, that's Raj. He works for me now. He's an Indian that works for me in the U.S. I have a lot of foreigners, so we're back to the 5 freedoms, and we can all agree on all those, and they sound great in theory, but once again, we can't forget about the human component, because even that animal that we deem is not being taken care of properly doesn't necessarily mean that person doesn't love it. It means that person is having to make decisions on what comes, where. And I see this all the time in Mexico. They have 3 kids. They're making $5 a day. They can't spend $300 on a dog spay. And it doesn't mean they don't care about their dog. And it ticks me off when I get vets down there from Canada and the U.S. and they go, "Oh, these people don't give a damn about their animals. Look how this animal looks. It has mange and it has fleas." And it's like, okay, look how the people look. Look where they're going back to. Look what their jobs are. So you got to put it in context. And that's it. And I do have CDs from the Montana Spay Neuter Task Force, and I'll probably give them to you, and you can certainly burn them. And there's not a problem that way. So we can burn those, and it is a how-to and a step-by-step program, and it has their anesthetic protocols. They've gotten kind of expensive because they're using Dormitor and things like that, and which, again, I'm all for, but you got to understand, how much money do you have? If you have an unlimited amount of money, I'm all for doing an unlimited amount of things, but it comes back to realities. So, okay?
Thanks very much, Jeff. Now, we have about 5 minutes or so if you'd like to ask some questions specifically about that presentation, although we do have some time after we're doing all the next lot of presentations to pull this all together this afternoon. So, any questions? Could we have a microphone? Thank you, Denise.
Hi, how are you going? Is the model or the principles for fixed clinics or in-clinics the same? Like, do you apply the same principles if you're getting out and about in the community or to reservations or so on and so forth?
I apply the same things.
So setting it up, or do you provide the same methodology behind setting up the clinic to do desexing clinics, say from a stable place or from a vet clinic or from a humane society?
Pretty close to the same, yeah. Obviously in my own facility we have access to gas anesthesia and things like that, where I don't have access to that on the road. When I go to Montana, I do, because I have my own oxygen concentrator and I have my own anesthesia machines. When I go to Mexico, we don't have that stuff available to us. So each place is slightly different. The key, in my opinion, is the surgery has to be the same. The suture material, how big your incisions are, surgical time. Those are the biggest factors in terms of pain and suffering, quite frankly. Get in, get out, do the job right, and you just ask how you keep them from pulling out stitches. You don't have stitches when I'm done. It's intradermal or I glue them, I like intradermal, and just an intradermal stitch by itself is usually fine, but you take intradermal and glue it, they can go out and lay in water, and they're probably not going to get an infection, okay? And in Mexico, where it's humid and rains, and we're in the tropics, that's a big issue. So how you do it does make a difference. And, there's a big difference when you have an incision this big versus you have an incision this big, so they're all different. And that also goes back to using less reactive suture material. If you're going to use cat gut or Vicryl in the skin of an animal, you're going to have inflammation, tremendous amounts of inflammation. And the more humid, especially Vicryl, since it's a braided suture material, if it touches anything outside the body, it's going to wick fluid in a humid environment. So, you can use Vicryl on the inside, you could use Vicryl on the abdominal wall, but I would never use Vicryl in the sub-Q or in the skin itself, even though it's a great suture material, especially in a human environment. I just wouldn't do it. I think it causes too much pain, suffering, and post-operative complications. So there's ways around everything, but you got to think outside the box sometime. And people just get so regimented. I'm using Vicryl, so I use it for everything. I'm using whatever, cat gut, so I use it for everything. And we mix and match all the time based on the environment. So.
Okay, got lots of questions. Michael?
Yes, I just wondered if you'd noticed any difference over the years in the cooperation or the lack of cooperation of the vets in the local areas that you're going into, and also, I guess, in particular in the States, are you totally reliant on the local government in that area actually funding the program for you?
Sure. In the States, we get nothing from the government. I don't take anything from humane organizations as a general rule, unless I'm working for them, like they're hiring me to do a job. The biggest difference, and once again, I think it goes back to globalization and stuff. There's no question when we first go in, there's resistance from veterinarians. In Mexico, the first year when we opened our clinic, people didn't like the fact that we were opening the clinic because we had the only state-of-the-art clinic in the whole area, and we had all the top equipment. Bottom line is they have to compete with that, and it's really hard for them to because they're not as trained as well as my vets. Having said that, the first year we did the major spay-neuter, we had only one veterinarian that would do backup for us. So in the middle of the night, so there's a complication. This last year, we had 12 sign up. And this last year, we had 3 come to the clinic and actually ask, how are you doing that? I'm interested in learning. Okay? I'm going to be down there in November, and we have 50 vets signed up right now, 50 in the Yucatan signed up to go through a spay-neuter course with us, 25, 2 days each, and then the 5th day we're going to try to do 600 animals. We're using those vets. And Dr. Mackey's come down a few others. So the idea is to train and leave behind something that works. And in one sense, I have almost a $400,000 investment in my clinic in Mexico. So in one sense, I'm actually, helping the competition, but to me, that's what life's about. I love competition. So, bring it on, boys. Let's do it. You can spay the most number of animals the fastest.
You're still doing the desexing at the reduced price. How do you manage to, on your behalf, how do you manage to make ends meet and still piss off all the other veterinarians because you're undercutting them? How do you keep harmony in that?
A lot of that's changed in the States. There's no question. 20 years ago when I started, I was a pariah, and I really took a lot. I was just idealistic. Like I went out and advertised like vaccine clinics, and I guess at that time vets weren't supposed to advertise. Well, no one told me that in vet school, So I was hammered quite a bit. But I've always had that kind of rugby attitude. I don't care. You hit me, I hit you twice as hard, And so I just kept plunging forward. And now the thing is, because we've actually, I feel like, PPP has kind of changed the face of veterinary medicine in Colorado. There's so much competition. Everybody and their grandmother has, even clinics around me have their special low days, their low spay-neuter days. So I think part of it is just overall awareness. And I think part of it is the veterinary profession is just given up. They say, well, these guys aren't going to go away, so we might as well figure out how to work with them. And it always starts as an uphill battle. And I say in Mexico, it's been phenomenal over 3 years how we went with absolute, we're against this, to now, okay, we want to be involved in this. So it changes with time, and that's the positive side. But just be willing to take a few licks along the way.
And Jeff, I think Michael's question is also about how do you manage to make ends meet if you're doing it so cheap and other vets are claiming they need to charge the amounts they do?
They drive different cars than I drive, and they live in different houses. I don't know. I don't know how you make a cat spay $150. I honestly don't know. I don't tube my cats, but my cats don't take me more than 8 or 10 minutes. And the time it takes them to tube and prep an animal, I'm already done with it. So I think it's about efficiency, and volume. And I just read an article about how to compete with, low-cost places, and that's they compared us to McDonald's. I don't particularly have a problem with that. It is about you make a little bit on everything, you just do a lot more of it. We do a really high volume. I do about $2.4 million through our clinic. Now, if I was a normal clinic, my guess is that would be closer to $15 million. Just because I'm doing surgeries for $200 or $300 that cost $2,000 or $3,000. How do you make a knee surgery that really doesn't take more than $50 worth of material? How do you make that a $5,000, $3,000 surgery? I don't know. I haven't figured it out. Other than, once again, they drive a lot nicer cars than I do, and most of them don't work near as much as I do. So,
just ask a lawyer.
Yeah.
Just ask a lawyer. They'll tell you how you managed to get the increase on that.
Okay, we have some other questions. Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you. I was just wondering, we run pound facilities and we watch intact animals go out every day being reclaimed. Are there any non-surgical interventions that work?
Well, I think things are coming. Yeah, you have neuter sol, which you can inject. There's, I think what I've tried to do with the guys, when you start talking about neutering and you have the guy that starts doing this, and they'll do the dance, it's like, no, really, it's your dog. We're not talking about you, Usually when I see that or I interact with that kind of person, I say, I'll do a vasectomy on your dog. It's no big deal. Vasectomies are really pretty easy to do. And that's something, once again, you're not taught in vet school and just thinking outside the box. I had to deal with a place called Mission Wolf that has X number of wolves, but they live in packs, but they don't want them to reproduce because they only have so much space for them, So, but you can't take their hormones because their hormones are so involved in the whole pack mentality. So what we did was we just vasectomized them all. And I thought, well, God, we could just do this for all these guys that don't want to get their dogs neutered, Now, once again, I still think there's more benefits to being neutered, but if that's the compromise, I'm willing to do that, So that's always an option is do vasectomies, which we just don't think about.
Any implants or anything like that?
Well, there are implants, and I've been asked several times over the years, and I can't bring myself to do it. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I'll just tell you this: I neutered a big Great Dane once, and I got a scrotal hematoma. If anyone knows what a scrotal hematoma is, big bag, and the guy comes back in 4 or 5 days later. And I'm looking at this, and it's like, I don't tend to have those very often. I'm like, oh, I was mortified. It's like, oh my God, I got to do a scrotal ablation. The guy shakes my hand and says, thanks, doc, this looks great. He says, will it stay that big? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe, So I was like, okay, so you never know. It makes no sense.
Sorry, Jeff, I'm not quite sure why you interpreted that as testicle implants. I was meaning contraceptive implants.
Oh, okay. Well, no, for males or for females?
Can everybody hear Jeff, or does he need to be at the mic here?
For males or for females? Well, there are things coming. I'm working on a drug right now that hopefully will sterilize a female after 3 pills, after 3 doses. I'm not allowed to say even where we're doing the work. The bottom line is I think we may have it on the market within 3 to 5 years. Hopefully it'll put me out of business. For males, I'm less concerned about because females control the population. Having said that, there's neuter sol, which is not available in the U.S. anymore, but I think it is still available in other places around the world where you inject them. But it really works on 4 months and under, so you have to inject them early on, and there's still some potential side effects to that. I don't know anything else that's on the market. There's a group in America that I think if you come up with a contraceptive pill that works, I think there's a $20 or $40 million bonus, So there's a lot of people working on it. There's nothing that I'm aware of that works 100% other than this drug that we are working on that we think will work 100% on females. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just use that?
It's not used. Sorry, it's not used.
Can you just start again and say what you said?
we have a product here, Suplorin, which is a GnRH antagonist, but it only lasts for a couple of years, up to 2 years. But it's probably a bit of a stopgap for people who have got that scrotal mentality.
So it's gonadotropin hormone?
Yeah, so it just feeds back on the pituitary. It was
for males?
Well, yes, it is for males, but it works in females too.
Well, see, that would be, from a, I don't know what it costs, but see, that could be really good for street dogs. So the average life expectancy of a street dog is only 3.1 years. So if it made them, so they wouldn't reproduce for 2 years, and you get them, as semi-young adults, you essentially might make them non-reproductive during their whole lifespan.
It's not cheap.
Yeah, that's
wouldn't be as cheap as
when you're doing street dogs, it pretty much has to be free.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, other questions? Peter, did you have one? Yes? Silvana's coming with a mic. Sorry, we'll come back.
Yeah, I have actually talked in New Zealand. They have actually got a vaccine to sterilise mice, so one day it will come, I think, and maybe sooner than we think.
Yeah,
but
it's coming.
Yeah, a couple of technical questions just quickly is, do you use post-op antibiotics, and do you ovary hysterectomise or just ovaryectomise, just quickly?
I don't care either. It kind of depends on the animal. For younger animals, small incision, you usually get everything out. If you have a big bitch that's been lactating and older, it's a lot easier to just take the ovaries. And the literature says there's no difference. You don't have to take the, So I'm not stuck on that. It's once again, tradition has me taking everything. And sometimes I actually have to stop and say, okay, I don't need to make this incision an extra inch longer to get to the bifurcation of the uterus because it doesn't matter, But I was taught how to, so it goes back to that tradition how I was taught, So it's a habit. But right now, as I teach new vets, I say, look, as long as you get the ovaries out, that's what matters. Now, if you have an older dog and has a really big uterus or uterine cyst or something like that, there might be an advantage, But right now, the data looks like it doesn't matter. The antibiotics, in Mexico, we do one shot, I believe, of penicillin. As a general rule, in my own clinic, never. I think we way overuse antibiotics. I think their immune system is fine. I think if I was in a shelter situation with stressed animals, I might be more likely to. So you have to look at it in the context of its entirety. But once again, and Terry Pack, Dr. Mackey, Dr. Chamberlain, the people who just do numbers and really have been doing it for years will say the same thing. Smaller incision, easy tissue handling, less reactive suture material, that's the key to less postoperative complications, not drugs.
Okay, we had a question. Was that down the back?
No, I've just got one.
Yes.
Do you actually come out and do workshops for, say, at shelter clinics, or could you?
Sure. I do them all. I've done them all over the world, so, yeah, never a problem.
Okay, sounds great.
In fact, it kind of feels weird that I haven't done a surgery in the last 2 days.
When are you flying back home?
He's here for a few extra days, Denise.
I got Saturday and Sunday free.
Saturday, Sunday and Monday.
Yeah, I leave Monday morning.
Okay, and actually we might think about that if some other vets here would like to actually... Are you interested in that? Put up your hand if you're a vet here and you would like to go to a workshop while you're here. Couple? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, we'd have quite a few vets out at our clinics, and I think it'd be great.
Yes. But I just thought some of these might like to come and have a look too.
I was just being selfish.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I think we will go to lunch because it's 1:00. We've got half an hour for lunch and then back for some more sessions. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much, Jeff.